Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Loren Schoenberg. I'm the executive director of the Jazz Museum in Harlem, and on behalf of my co-director, Christian McBride, and myself, I'd like to welcome you all very much for coming to this evening for, well, we're almost going into our second year now of our Thursday evening Harlem Speaks sessions. And for those of you who've come for the first time, I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on what we're doing and how we happen to be here and what this series is all about. But first I'd like to introduce our huge staff, which is myself and Miss Wilhelmina Grant, right there, who everyone knows. And my co-producer of the series, who's also the editor of Harlem World, Mr. Greg Thomas. And as I look around the audience, I see so many faces that I know, folks who've come back, and I also see a very healthy sampling of new folks. We have some folks from out of state and even out of the country here this evening. I'd like to welcome you all very much and welcome you to our Jazz Museum in Harlem family. We also have two of our past honorees here, so I'd like to acknowledge in the audience we have one of the great jazz vocalists, Mr. Alan Harris is here. And someone who's also a wonderful, not only a wonderful dancer, but a historian and has really become a very close member of our close-knit group here, legendary Taja, Jackie Murdoch, who dances at the Apollo Theater, and many, many other places also. What we're doing is for the last 3 years is trying to build a jazz museum in Harlem, and right now we're looking at a few sites of where we're going to put it, but I can tell you that regardless of where it winds up and what ultimate shape it takes, the one thing that it's going to do, number one, is put musicians to work. It'll be a state-of-the-art, experiential, whatever adjectives you want to use about how people describe museums these days. But at the bottom line, we intend to have anywhere between 15 to 20 musicians working all the time in the club, and with an emphasis on the Harlem musicians, because the museum's going to be here. So if it doesn't rhyme, what's the point of doing it? So that's our basic conception. We have a website. It's called thejazzmuseuminharlem.org. You can find out a lot about what we're doing. We have a lot of exciting programming coming up, and I'll mention now, before I introduce our very special guest, which is, of course, such a wonderful audience this evening, that our guest in 2 weeks' time was supposed to have been a wonderful guitarist who played with Dizzy Gillespie and has his own band. His name is Ed Cherry. And unfortunately, there was a scheduling conflict on our part and his part. It's no reflection upon him, but something happened and the date didn't work out. So we figured instead of putting someone else in on that date and having a whole bunch of people showing up to see Ed Cherry and having someone else, and the people who we had, his or her people wouldn't be here, we're going to do something that's quite outrageous in the jazz world, and I wonder if you'll be interested. We're going to have a jam session. Okay, so I'm going to sit in if they'll let me, and we're also going to have some of our regulars here from the New Amsterdam Musical Association. Bob Cody, we hope, is going to bring a saxophone, and our wonderful young volunteer Alex, who's back at the door there, who plays a guitar. Hopefully he's going to sit in, and maybe we'll get Rudy Lawless, and we'll see, and we'll have a great jam session. So anyway, that's in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much. So, it's not quite beating around the bush, but it's my great pleasure to introduce someone. I don't even know how to start talking about this man, but I don't think I need to tell you, because that's preaching to the choir, because you're here to hear him, but you're not here to play the drums tonight or even to sing. We're going to learn from the wisdom, from the great life of Mr. Grady Tate. Here we go. Should we move this, Nicole? Or can you just put that on the side? I can't reach over there. Thank you very much. Grady, welcome. So happy to have you here. And first of all, folks, you'll notice that we're recording these events, not commercially. These are done for the archives of the Jazz Museum in Harlem. And there's so, I don't even, to think where to begin talking to my guest this evening. One could start in the standard autobiographical format. Were you born? When were you born? Or I could start with the following statement, which would be, I'm not sure how many of you outside of the music business understand. You may know Mr. Tate as the drummer on your favorite jazz record, or maybe on 10 of your favorite records, or 100 of your favorite records, or who played on this concert, or who did all these wonderful things. But for me as a musician, Mr. Tate belongs to another group of musicians. And this is one of those select group of people who, in the ultra-competitive world of the recording studio and professional musician world, that would get, only a handful of people like this, who would get a phone call and say, no matter what needs to be done, no matter what the record date is, no matter what kind of music it is, no matter what has to be read, no matter whether there's no rehearsal or whatever is a television show or a recording contract, it's a very small list of people who are on that list. And of course, Grady Tate, for years, has been at the very top of that list as a professional. And that's something that goes way beyond, I think, what even a lot of jazz fans sometimes appreciate about the total musicianship. Because we're at the Jazz Museum in Harlem, Grady, I was wondering if I could just start by asking you, when you first came to Harlem, when the first time that you encountered Harlem?
I think I came to Harlem in 1906.
Good night. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back next. In General Morton's band.
Somebody had the nerve to say he was only 2 years old.
Oh boy.
No, but I've always dreamed of Harlem. I've seen pictures of Harlem. I've read stories about Harlem. But I came here for the first time, I think, around 1955, 56. And I just gotten out of the service. And a buddy of mine who lived in North Carolina, and we all went to school in North Carolina, but his parents were here, and he decided to, he said, hey man, come on. No, this was much earlier than that. This was about 1947, 48. I must have been 15, 16. So he said, man, look, let's go to Harlem. Let's go to New York. I said, man, what are you talking about? I'm young. I don't have any money. He said, well, you got a set of drums. I said, okay. So I pawned a set of drums. And, well, my parents have never forgiven me for that, but I bought several things for them, too, like houses and all kinds of things. So I paid them back. In just a small measure did I pay them back, because I had a great family. But I pawned a set of drums, and my buddy and I came to New York. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I saw all of these delicious black people walking around, enjoying themselves, and having places to go, and things to see, and jobs to do. And I had on a very strange coat, because since I was coming to New York, I thought I'd dress as sharply as I could, so it was the worst looking coat you've ever seen in your life. And we came to the Apollo, and I heard Erskine Hawkins' band, and I just nearly died, because I'd never heard anything like that before. And then I came downtown, and we decided to go and see the great Stan Kenton Orchestra. And at that time, I think Shelley Mann was playing drums with the orchestra. And we stood out from like 4 o'clock in the morning to get in, and we moved along inch by inch, inch by inch. Finally got our tickets mid-morning, and we entered the theater, and I said, oh boy, and I ran, he and I ran, and we got seats right down front. And comes time for the band to perform, and I was sitting there, and I said, wow, and I looked down, and there was a stage way way down there. I heard the band come on. I heard Buddy Rich do some little funny thing. No, it was Shelley Man. Heard Shelley do some funny things. And I said, oh my God, this is going to be incredible. And they started playing, and I was leaning over the rail, and I watched them. And I watched them as they came up, and they floated up and 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 up. I didn't see a damn thing. I was just all I could do was just sit there and look up and hear the music. So that was a little thing to learn. But it was so interesting. The band was great. Everything was wonderful, man.
So we have you coming to New York. You hear Erskine Hawkins' band Uptown. You go downtown. You hear the great Stan Kenton Orchestra with Shelley Man on drums. Now that we've established that as the time when you first came here, which was about 15, 16.
Yeah.
Now I would like to take it back, and I would like to find where you came to New York from, where it was that you were born, and a little background on your family, just to set the stage for all these folks who are interested in hearing about
I
how.
was born in Durham, North Carolina. And all right. And I didn't know anything but Durham. And at that time, I didn't think I needed to know anything else but Durham, because this was a very unique community. We had our own banks. We had our own department stores, huge drug stores, huge food markets. We had people who owned coal yards, so we were serviced by black people who owned their own companies. And I came from a rather meek background, but my mother and father had their own home. I've always had a home, and I've always had two people who loved me dearly, and whatever I wanted, I couldn't think of something that I wanted that they didn't get for me. I came from one of the most incredibly privileged area that I can imagine. I don't know that there's a better place for me to have grown up than in Durham, North Carolina. I learned to speak, I learned to think, I learned to listen, and I learned to do, because these are things that I had seen at home. My father was a brick mason and stone mason. He and his father were the first two black stonemasons on the great Duke University campus. As a result, they were paid well, much better than most people in the area. So we had the things that make you comfortable to live. That's food and clothing, shelter, and an occasional bit of a party-like atmosphere. I was 5 years old, and my home was on the back of the campus of North Carolina College. At that time, it was called North Carolina College for Negroes. And there was a talent show that was being put on this particular afternoon. And my mother and father said, "Bernard?" I said, "Yeah, Dad." She said, "Come on, go to a talent show?" I said, "Yes, sir, I guess." I went to this talent show. And for the first time I saw a rhythm section, piano, bass, and drums. And I heard people sing. I saw people dance. And I heard people applaud. And I listened to that band. The drummer's name was Cy Wall. And he was doing things that I had heard over this little music system that we had. And I I couldn't believe what was going on. It was the most incredibly beautiful thing I'd ever heard and seen. And till the end, the MC said, well, we've had our contestants. If there's no one else who would like to, perform, we'll call it an afternoon. This was sponsored by RC Cola. And my mother and father, they were on the ends, so they stepped away and started up Duke Auditorium's steps, the little side with the walkway up to the exit. And they looked around and they said, what are you doing up there, boy? I had gone just the other way. and I went up on stage and this man said, what do you want, little boy? I said, I want to sing. That's what I want to do. And he said, what do you, wait, fellas, don't break down yet. He said, what do you want to sing? I said, I want to sing a song called One Rose. And he asked the pianist, whose name was Lanky Cole, you know it? And Yankee said, I know all the songs. And Lanky found a key for me, and I sang a tune called The One Rose. You're sweet as a red rose in June, dear. I love you, I adore you, I do. Each night through Loveland we'll wander, sweetheart, telling love stories anew. Out of the dark sky, out of the blue clouds, a dark sky came rolling, breaking my heart in two. But don't leave me alone, 'cause I love only you. You're the one rose that's left in my heart. I'd heard that song repeatedly. That was 68 years ago. And I had heard this song because, my family had the regular Victrolas and that kind of thing. And I was then, as I am now, one who never sleeps. I'll nod. But I guess maybe that's why they call me Bernard. But I was quite comfortable getting up when my parents had fallen asleep and slipping in and turning on the Victrola very quietly, just loudly enough for me to hear. And I listened to all these records. And I knew something was happening. And it's been that way since I was able to understand or remember or think about anything. It's always been about music or something that is concerned with music. I've just never wanted to do anything else. And I've never done anything else but music. And I have enjoyed this life as much, I think, as is humanly possible. I am extremely happy.
Yes.
Grady, how did it happen that drums came into your life? And how did it happen that it became clear to you that music was going to be your profession? And were there other musicians in your family?
Well, I had an uncle who had a quartet, and I listened to them all the time, listened to them rehearsing, but I had never seen a drum set until that particular evening that I went to the talent show. And I knew at that moment that's what I wanted to do. And shortly after that, my dad said, "Hey, boy." I said, "Yes, Dad." He said, "What do you want for Christmas?" I said, "I want a set of drums." He said, okay. And just went on about his business. I went on about mine. And comes Christmas morning, I wake up, and I walk down the stairs, and there was a set of drums. He had ordered them from New York City. A set of white pearls. And I went to that group of things there, and I looked at them, and I set them up, and I set them up correctly. And I picked up the sticks, and I started playing from hand to hand. Most people, if they pick up drumsticks or something, they'll play with the hand that they favor. They'll play, if they have to play da 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 da, they'll play ooh da 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 ooh da 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 with that right hand. But I play from hand to hand, and that should have given somebody a clue. This boy's got some drum in his system. But that's how I first became familiar with an instrument, and I played for a good year, and then this same drummer, Cy Wall, asked me if I'd like to study with him, and I said, yes, God, yes. And he taught me the rudiments. By the time I was in third grade, I knew all the drum rudiments. I was beginning to read music. When I arrived in the high school band, I was already a reader. I could read almost anything that was put in front of me. And it was just so natural for me. You know, I didn't have to put forth that great amount of effort that many people use in order to do something new. It was not new to me. It was something old. You know, so I've just been doing it all my life.
Durham being a big city, I assume that there were some major theaters there, and was it a main stop for the great bands of the day to come by and play? And who were some of the first great bands you heard, and some of the and the musicians that you encountered?
Durham was a small town. I thought it was the biggest town in the world, but it was a very small town. But as I said earlier, we had so many of the things that many of the larger cities didn't have. You know, there were black people there that I saw with huge, beautiful homes and cars. You know, the North Carolina Mutual. I knew these people. These were my neighbors, and it was just a natural thing to want to dress in a certain way and to speak in a certain way. I grew up speaking the language rather clearly. I grew up with very little accent of any kind. My accent was determined by the language that I spoke, and that was English, and I always spoke the language. I was very interested in the language, and I learned a great deal about the language. I have a degree in theater. I thought for a while I wanted to be an actor, so I had to go that route. I love things that deal with the language, you know, the music, the art, the dance. That's just my whole life. My whole life is built around something that brings a great amount of joy to a huge number of people. The bands that came through helped, because we had a place called the Durham Armory, and I wasn't allowed to go there until I was 13 years old. Then I had to stay upstairs with my mother and father. But I slipped away, and Joe Jones came through, and I propped both of my elbows on the bandstand. I stood there and propped these little arms up there and just looked at Joe Jones playing the drums. And you're talking about pictures. Pictures. When he played, there was so much joy in his face and in his body. And so much joy was received from what he was producing with this incredible being, this self. And during the break, when they broke for a cup of ginger ale, if you will, I stayed parked right there at the bandstand, and they came back and they did that last set. And I looked up at my dad, mom, and they were looking at the music. They weren't even concerned about me because they knew I was comfortable and I was safe. At the end of it, I still watched Joe Jones, and he began to break down the drums, and he said, "Hey, boy." Me? He said, "Yeah." He said, "You a drummer?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Come up here." And I walked around and went up on the stage. And he said, did you bring any drumsticks with you? I said, "No, sir." He said, "Oh, you want a pair of mine?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Hold out your hand." So I held out my hand. And he took a pair of drumsticks and said, wham! Hit me in my hand with those drums. And tears the size of that boy's head there. You see that boy right there? Ladies and gentlemen, that's my manager, Ron Walker.
Some introduction.
Joe Jones says, "That's just a tiny bit of the pain that you're going to receive if you want to pick these damn things up and use them." And he told the truth. He told the truth. Because we've had good times, we've had hard times. I mean, we've had to fight people to get out of town. You know, people didn't want to pay us money half the time. But we made it through. And we made it through because we were doing what we wanted to do. What we had to do, as a matter of fact. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I had to do it. You know. But all the big bands came through the Durham Armory. And I listened to all of them. And with each one of them, I learned more and more. So as a result of that, after I finished high school, I got a scholarship to go to Morgan. And I went there, and the band leader's name was R. Hayes Strider. I thought that was interesting. R. Hayes Strider. What a beautiful name. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot of the classical literature. And he started me to playing vibes and the malleted instruments. And that too was interesting. And I don't know, I've always been kind of crazy. We were doing this opera, not opera, this classical thing, William Tell Overture, and I just decided to go down and pick up some ducks that had been packed, and we hung them up above the stage, and for the finale, well, the drum section is just wailing away. I pulled the cord and all these ducks fell down on the stage. Yeah, it was big fun, big fun. Because I'm crazy, that's what it is. I've always been nuts. But the guys who graduated in January, I went there in September, the guys who graduated in January, they were all in the ROTC, and this was the beginning of the Korean War. They were sent immediately to Korea. And out of a number of 375 young men, 3 of them came back. And my buddy and I said, now, we got to do something about this. So when we came out of school that spring, I immediately went down to the different branches of service. They'd all have booths there. And I checked each one of them out and got to the Air Force. And they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, I'm a musician, I'm a drummer. And they said, well, take this test. So I took the test, and they said, you qualify. So I volunteered for the Air Force. They sent me to San Antonio, where I did my basic training. And after that, I went to band school. And I graduated from band school, and they sent me to my permanent base, which was in Waco, Texas. James Conley Air Force Base in Waco, Texas. And as I tell my wife, I spent 4 years crawling in the mud and on my belly, but that was in Waco, Texas, so it was okay. I didn't go to Korea. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to fight anybody. All I wanted to do was play my drums, and that's what I did. So that's how I contribute to the war effort. I ain't for dying. No. I don't want to kill anybody. But, things have just worked for me.
You mentioned hearing Joe Jones. I assume that was with the Count Basie band?
Yeah, he was with
Right.
Basie band.
I'm just curious about some of the other drummers that you might have heard in those days. Did you get a chance to hear Sonny Greer with the Ellington Band? What was that like? Because as I understand it, the way he played was quite unorthodox.
It was unorthodox because he was a drummer. I don't think he could have played with anybody else but Duke Ellington. But he was the Ellington Band. When the band didn't make enough money to eat or to travel, Sonny would go out and make some money on the pool table. He was a whiz. He kept the band eating half the time, so they had to keep him as a drummer.
This is the true jazz history. You don't get it. No, but Greg, I'm wondering for those in the audience who never got to see Sonny, can you just paint a little bit of a picture of like what he did with the band? What was it that made him unusual?
Well, he was a great timekeeper. He could play time. And time is something that most people aren't even aware of. They hear it and don't hear it. But when you have, a certain number of other musicians around you who are dependent upon your being able to keep time, then it turns into another thing entirely. He had the time of doom. I mean, if you can't, you said, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The band can say, he'd still be right there. Wouldn't move at all, and he had all the accoutrements. He had all kinds of bells and chimes, and oh man, he was a showman. He wasn't that great drummer that people look for. What they look for to be great. He was a showman. And lots of times, many of our fine musicians forget the fact that 80% of this thing is about show business. Many of them think that it's about me. It's not about you. It's about what you do, about what you're helping other people do. You have to be very unselfish when you're, especially in a rhythm section. And I've never been the drummer that many people are, but I too am a timekeeper. I'd rather keep time than to play a solo. In fact, I hate playing solos. because something's missing when I'm playing. What happened to the band? I saw all the guys with the bands. You know.
Anybody else?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's such a fascinating concept. I've never actually thought of that before, and I've been playing music myself for a while.
Yeah.
Why is it that when the drum solo plays that they all stop? And you have to play when everyone else is playing. It's a very kind of like selfish thing of the other
Yeah.
musicians, isn't it? And you have to play the whole tune while they play for 48 minutes. And then when you decide to play, then they all put down the horns and start and listen. It's insane.
I gotta go get some ginger ale.
I think you want some ginger ale with me.
Thank you, I brought my own.
Yeah, there are a couple of other names that I'd like to throw your way.
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
Cozy Cole, Sid Catlett, and Shadow Wilson. Maybe you can talk about those.
Well, they were so similar. See, during that period, the music was, it was pretty well laid out what you were going to do, and there weren't that many new sounds, you know, and the black bands had found something that maintained them, and it was called real out and out swing. And those 3 musicians that you mentioned could swing their butts off, man. Just swing. Shadow Wilson. It's hard to describe what they were doing, because if I did describe it, you wouldn't know what I was talking about. But if you heard it, you would know immediately what I'm saying. You know, swing, being able to swing is one thing. Being able to play is another thing. And a lot of drummers, a lot of musicians who play, but they don't swing. And if you don't swing for me, I've got no use for you. You know, because I want to say, "Phew, yeah." If it doesn't do that to me, you got it.
Is this a fair statement? You came up in a music world where you started playing, for the most part, playing jazz music and playing the things that you were playing outside of the orchestra and outside of the different things. You played for dancing a lot when you started. And now I assume, and for the last many years since you went into the recording studios and became a great concert artist yourself, that you don't play for dancing much anymore. Is that something that you miss, or am I wrong in my...
No, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. I enjoyed it because it was great seeing what people can do with their feet, you know. But it was difficult because a lot of the dancers were not as hooked into rhythm as we would like for them to be. So it was quite a chore at times to play for dancers. And dancers are sort of, you know, cutesy. And if they don't get off on what you're playing, then, hey, drummer, what's the matter? What do you mean with drummer, what's the matter? What's the matter with you, fool? What are you talking to?
I think there's about 500,000 drummers in the world smiling right now, and they don't know why, but it's because you just said that. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, we had ball doing. I had a ball doing all this stuff, man.
Yeah. One last drum question, just before we pick up the chronology where we have you in the Army, and then to find out what happened after, would be that, you know, the time period that you're talking about was the advent of Max Roach and the advent of Kenny Clark and the advent of Art Blakey and Shadow and all those people. And so since you came up in the world before that, I guess you really experienced that change. I mean, while you were at the drums, you saw the role of the drummer change. How did you first hear that kind of music?
Well, I saw it. I heard it change before I became the professional drummer. You know, Max. You know, it took a great while for me to warm up to Max. He was just so far ahead of different. I won't say far ahead. Mm-hmm. He was so different from the other drummers. And Kenny Clark could swing you into bad health, man. It just, ooh. But these guys were geniuses. You know, I'm a work master. These guys were geniuses. I never even dreamed. I don't see. They lived to play drums. I play drums to live. You know, because I love so many different things. I love loads of things, man. I love to sit and look at a picture and just go off on it. Yeah, you know, look at everything about it. It's just so beautiful. But these people were single-minded. I mean, you can't play like Max and not have been single-minded. These are geniuses, all of these guys, man.
Your response reminds me of something which I think is very important. I'm glad that you put it to me that way, which is that so many times I think when we talk to great jazz musicians, sometimes the interviewer can even do it as though all that existed were like what people were doing at a drum set playing rhythm and bands playing. But of course your life, from the way you're painting the picture for us, of course, was like for everyone else, a 365-degree thing, and the drums and the time were part of it. What happened when you got out of the Army? Exactly where did you go? What were you thinking? Was singing, you mentioned singing at the age of 7 or 8, singing that song.
Yeah.
Was singing something that you were still pursuing, or was that something that had to wait a long time?
Well, singing was something that I always did. I always sang. I mean, I walk now and sing. I'll lie in bed and sing 85 songs. You know, and my parents, my mother, hey, boy, stop humming, will you? You know? My wife, Vivian, sometimes she'll just walk over and say, shut up. But as soon as she moves that hand, I go right back to it. I love it. I can't help it. But after the service, I came out and I didn't know quite what I was going to do, so I went back to school, and that's where I studied theater and psychology, and I thought maybe I could go another way, another route, because I've seen how tragic so many people's lives are. You know, those who are artistic and they just live for that art and they don't quite accomplish what they would like to have accomplished. And in many instances, it kills them. You know, it just drives them crazy. So they can't do anything else worthwhile. You know, they can't put enough energy into anything else because it's not what I wanted. So I took a shot at that, and it was interesting. I ended up drinking a lot because I missed my music. I didn't know what it was, but that's what it was. After I graduated from North Carolina Central, I had just married my wife Vivian, that little funny-looking lady right there. Vivian had moved to Washington because she was employed there at the university. After she graduated, she was employed at the university, and she said, "Well, honey, what I'll do, I'll go up to Washington and because she'd gotten a gig with the government, and she said, I'll get to home and we'll straighten that out, and then you can move to Washington when you finish." I said, "Okay, baby." And that's what I did. I moved to Washington. And first few months, first few weeks I sat around and I said, well, let me see what am I going to do now. So I got a gig in the post office. Yeah, this is cool. And, you know, I was putting those letters in. And finally one day I just said, let's grab a handful of them, and I stuck them in that box. You know, hey, enough is enough.
Could you back up just for 1 second, Grady? I'm
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just to talk a little bit more about that study of theater.
Yeah.
What were you actually doing? Were you acting in plays? Were you studying the writing of plays? What did that mean? And what did you do exactly?
Studying theater.
Well, I studied theater. I did Shakespeare. I loved Shakespeare. I've always loved Shakespeare. Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I'm so meek and gentle with this butcher. I did Richard III, and I just, oh boy, I felt so masterful. It was just gorgeous. I loved it. But I didn't love it the way I did music, you know. But it was a great period in my life, and I'm so happy I went through that period, because it brought a new dimension to me and to my performance level. I was in Washington, and I was working in that post office, and after I shoved those letters, there was an organist in town who was coming to town in Washington. His name was Wild Bill Davis. And there was a saxophone player in Washington named Herschel McGinnis, who was a great saxophone player. And he and I had become friends, because I'd go around and occasionally listen to the music and stuff. And he said, "Hey, Tate, hey man," said, "I heard, Bill's coming into town." So I said, "Yeah, I heard, man." And he said, "Yeah, and he's going to drop his saxophone player off here in Washington. You know, in other words, he's firing him." He said, "Man, I'm going down and see if I can cop this gig." I said, "Why don't you come along with me?" I said, "Yeah, all right." So I got there, man, and he and I were there, and the second set, Bill said, you going to sit in with Herschel?" Said, "Yeah." Herschel went up, and Herschel played his buns off, And I was sitting there, sipping my ginger ale. And that third set, my ginger ale said, "Get up there and play some drums, boy." So I said, "Hey man, can I play one with you?" He said, "What do you play?" I said, "Drums." He said, "Yeah, come on up." I got up there and I played, man, and it felt so good. Oh my God, it felt good. And I got smashed. And I got home, and Vivian put me to bed. She said, "Just be quiet, don't say a word, just get on in the bed and show up." And I was out. And that was a Saturday night. Sunday morning, the phone rings about 9:30, 9:45. And, I heard it, but that's not my business. Bill, get the phone, She picked up the phone, and she said, and she came back and she said, "Baby?" I said, "What?" She said, "There's a call for you." I said, "Oh, I don't." She said, "It's Wild Bill Davis." I said, "It's who?" Who? And it was Wild Bill Davis. And Wild Bill said, "Hey, Grady?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Would you like to play with my band?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay. The first gig is Tuesday in Pittsburgh at Bertie's Little Hurricane Lounge." And I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, "Oh, yeah, there? Whoa, yeah." and I said, "Oh, Jesus, baby, what am I going to do? I ain't got no drums. I ain't got no drums." So she said, "Well, hey, So I took about $300-400 and found me the right pawn shop. And I picked up a set of drums and some cymbals. Worst cymbals I ever heard in my life. And I didn't have any cases, so we had to pack the stuff on top of the station wagon. And we drove to Pittsburgh and hit it, and that was the beginning of it. It started like that, the professional thing. It was just unbelievable.
This seems like a natural time, as much as I hate to do it right now, to take a short break. We're going to...
I don't want to take a break. Come on.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. I mean, like a real, actual 5, 8, 10 minutes. We got some water and some fruit and stuff in the back. I think there's still some left and some cookies. And we'll come back for part 2 with Mr. Tate. Before we start our second half, I'd just like to, on a serious note, put our heads together and just close our eyes for a moment. And we want to talk about someone who's very dear to us here, Naomi Johnson, who you all know if you come to our things. Naomi had a stroke. And she was just here. Well, she's everywhere. And right now she's in the hospital ill. And so I think just for a moment we can just do whatever you want to do for Naomi. And hope that you'll come back here in 2 weeks very strong and back to normal.
Can we send her cards or what?
We'll find out where. So we'll just put a good thought out there for Naomi, who's one of the most, say no more. Right, Naomi? That's right.
Yeah, swing that.
That's right. A swing dancer and a supporter of the music, like I don't know. So we'll put out a good word for Naomi and a good thought.
And also for Bobby Short.
Yeah.
Also mentioned the passing of the late great Bobby Short. That's correct. He'll be missed very much. Grady. We left you at Birdie's in Pittsburgh, where you drove with your drums on top of the car, I guess, in no cases.
Yeah.
Wow. What happened? How long did you stay with Wild Bill? Was this after April in Paris? Was he riding off the success of that, or did that not affect him at all because no one knew that he wrote it?
No,
He wrote the arrangement of April in Paris for Count Basie, that famous B, 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 B.
that was his. That was a closing number. I played April in Paris. 475,836 times.
If Phil Schaap was here, he'd say that the number was right. my dear friend Phil. I mean that is joking.
Bill, boy.
487,000. And he'd be right too. That's the problem.
But I worked with Bill. During the summer, we'd go to Grace's little Belmont in Atlantic City. And right across the street at Club Harlem, all the organists played there. Jack McDuff and all the bad players, man. I just had a party. And we'd do 2 months there every summer. I worked with Bill about 3 years, I think. 2 or 3.5 years. And the reason that it ended was that, Bill would occasionally augment the trio with either 2 or 3 other pieces, and in one of these affairs, he had Jerome Richardson. We were doing a cabaret down in Washington, and Jerome Richardson was called and made the gig. And I love big bad Jerome. I mean, he swung hard all the time. I just loved him. And what I didn't know at the time was that he was Quincy Jones's straw boss. You know, he called the guys to order, cursed them out, kicked them in the butt when he had to. And Jerome called me and he said, "Hey man, so, would you like to play with Quincy's band?" And I said, Quincy who? Quincy Jones. I said, yeah. I mean, like, who wouldn't want to play with Quincy? And Jerome said, "Okay, so I tell you what you do. Why don't you move to New York?" Because we were still living in Washington. And I said, "Move to New York." Okay. So I told Viv, I said, "Pack up, baby, we're going to move to New York." She said, "What?" "I'm not moving to New York." I said, "Oh, yes, you are." And we moved to New York, and I called the Alvin Hotel, which was known as a musician's hotel. I called the Alvin Hotel and made reservations. And I told them I wanted to be on the Broadway side. And I got a room with a double hot plate, right, baby? And I said, now I'm sitting right in front of Birdland. So we moved to New York. You know, we didn't know anything about it. But I just said it was time to take a chance.
What year would this be, Grady? Just so we can have an idea.
That was 1962. 1962. And Jerome said, "I'm gonna set you up with a audition with the band." So I said, "Okay, no problem." So there was a bar on 50th Street that a couple of drummers used to hang out. So I said, "Let me go and get some advice." And I went there, and there he was, Papa Joe Jones, my mentor. So I went to Papa Joe and I said, "Hey, Papa Joe," I said, I got an audition with the Quincy band, Quincy Jones big band." He said, what can you tell me? Anything?" And he said, "Yes, of course, I can tell you something." You know, he read back. I said, "Oh, shit, Papa Joe was a character. Well, of course I can tell you something. Yes, of course." So I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Well, when the band is counted off, give them a little ding howl, you dig?" I said, "Ding howl? What is a ding howl?" He said, "You'll find out when they count it off." So I said, "Okay, Joe. Thanks a lot, buddy." And I made the audition. And Quincy turned around, he said, yeah, baby. And the rest is history. Because in Quincy's band was loaded with contractors. The best playing contractors you've ever heard. My phone did not stop ringing, and it has not stopped ringing since that time. I've done so many things. I don't remember 80% of them, because I used to work sometimes 48 hours straight. I've gone in, I've parked my car in a garage and gone into one studio and then go to another studio and another studio. And I forget where my car is parked. I've come out, I've gone into the studio and it was sunshiny and warm and mellow, and come out and snow is up to your behind. You know, I mean, it's just, it was grueling, but I was determined to do all I could, and I did that, and it almost killed me, but it was such an experience. That we played every kind of music. I did every conceivable kind of recording. I worked with trios and symphony orchestras. I worked with just nothing but down-home country guitar players. Played with hippies. It's just been amazing, man. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. When it happened, it happened. And that's the way it's always been for me. I've always been able to read. I was playing drums on just album after album, session after session. And there was a drummer there named Bobby Rosengarten. And Bobby was playing percussion on most of these dates. Then he began to call me on his dates. And I knew that Bobby was working with the Tonight Show, the Carson Band. And Billy Taylor got his show at Channel 7, whatever that is, ABC. And Bobby Rosengarten went to the contractor over at NBC and said, hey, I'd like for Grady to step in. I began doing the Tonight Show. I never knew how these things happened. I couldn't tell somebody, hey, what you have to do is do this. I can't do that. You know? Everything fell into place. And I was scared to death 90% of the time, because can I do this? You know, it's amazing. God takes care of fools and monkeys and, you know. Oh, man. It was just unbelievable. You get up there and somebody said, yeah, baby. And you know, you get that look in your eye. You're all right. Yeah, thanks, man. It's been a wonderful life. That's why, you know, I have no complaints. I've always wanted to sing. I've always loved singing. And I would like to do that exclusively. But it just won't happen that way, you know. Because the drums has been the thing that has propelled me. And I would feel like an enemy if I just said, no, I don't want to play anymore. I do want to play some more, but I want to sing too. And I enjoy both of them.
Along the road, while you were doing all that great studio work and all those record dates and all the television and the soundtracks and all that kind of stuff, you also participated throughout in all these wonderful classic jazz albums that are on so many people's lists. One I'd like to ask you about. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about this in an interview, so I'm not even sure what you thought of it. But you were on that classic recording with Stan Getz, with Chick Corea and those people and that band. And I was wondering if you want to talk about that.
Oh, I love talking about that, because that was another thing that happened that was just, it was like a death call. You don't want to go, but you have no choice. If you're going to die, you're going to die. You know, I had never even anticipated playing with Stan Getz, because Getz has always been one of my particularly favorite players. You know, I know he was a kook. He was out there, man. But he could play. and Roy Haynes was playing in his band, and Roy is one of my all-time favorite musicians. And he's such an energetic person. At 80 years old, he's as young as any drummer out there, playing hip and slick and strong. Roy Haynes is a demon. Roy was playing with Chick and Stan and Ron. They've been touring. And something happened between Stan Getz and Roy Haynes. And Creed Taylor, the producer, called me on a Sunday evening, I guess maybe 7 o'clock or so. I said, Grady? I said, hey, man, how you doing? He said, got a thing for you tomorrow. I said, oh, okay, what is it? He said, well, we're out at Rudy's. I said, well, I know that. The guy worked almost every day at Rudy's. You know, Rudy Van Gelder, the man that everybody hates. He's so crazy. He's a genius. Give him that much, you know. Let him be crazy. Because he's a hell of an engineer, man. He can record things and they go down in history. But he was weird.
How weird was he?
I'm not going to do it.
Talk about the Johnny Carson.
Oh, there is one story about him that I could tell you. To digress, Ron Carter and I used to play. We used to record at Rudy Van Gelder's almost every day. And Rudy, people didn't like Rudy because Rudy didn't seem to like people. But Ron and I enjoyed him, first of all, because he gave us the sound that we wanted to hear from our instruments, you know. And that's something that's very unusual, because all the engineers say that this is the way I want my drums to sound. I want my drums to sound like what I want them to sound like, you know. And Rudy can get that thing for you. So Ron and I, this was Christmas time. Ron and I were on the way out to the studio, and Ron said, "Hey man, let's get Rudy a Christmas gift." I said, "All right." I said, "What? I tell you, Ron, let's get him some work gloves." Now, work gloves for Rudy, and we weren't even hip to this. Rudy always wore gloves when he handled his equipment. Nobody else, none of the other engineers would do that. But this was his equipment, his recording studio, so he had everything his way. So he put those gloves on when he made an adjustment on a microphone or a stand. And we said, let's get him some work gloves. That's gonna be funny. So on the way, we stopped at John's Bargain Store, one of those places, you know, and picked up 2 pairs of work gloves, and we had them elaborately wrapped, you know, big bows. And we went to the studio. We got there a little early, and we walked in. We said, "Hey, Rude, Merry Christmas, baby." And we threw him these things, and we walked away. And we went back in our little booth, and we went. And we watched him. And Rudy fumbled around in there for a while, and then he came out, and we said, "Oh boy, this is it." And he came out, and he looked at Ron and me, and he said, "Nobody has ever given me anything before." And we both looked at Rudy, and I said, "Ron, well, you kick me first. You kick me first. Then I'll kick you." Oh, God. But that's how strange Rudy was. But Rudy loved Ron and me. He loved us. And he always gave us that great sound. But back to Chick and Roy. And he said it's tomorrow from 10, well, the first session is from 10 to 1, and then 2 to 5, and if we need to, we'll go on Tuesday. So I said, okay. And I said, oh, Jesus. Now, Roy Haynes has been playing with Stan and Chick and Ron, and what am I going to play? Can I really do that comfortably? So I pulled out all of Roy Haynes' records, and I listened to, all that night I was listening to Roy Haynes. And I pulled out Stan, and I listened to Stan. Well, I know how Ron sounds. So I said, okay. And I got to the studio, and something, I don't know what it is, something said, whew, just dropped a blanket over me. I couldn't see. You know, all I could do was hear. I heard Stan, and I responded to whatever happened. And that's to me, one of the best things that Stan Getz has ever done. What's the name of it? Sweet Rain. Sweet Rain. And it was the fastest. We did the whole album in 2 hours and 46 minutes. Because Stan was sick and had to get home because he'd been out on the road. And he said, one take on everything, one take. We didn't rehearse anything. And that shit was hard, let me tell you. Ron Carter, you know, he's got the time of doom. He surrounds you with that sound. And I was so comfortable. I've never been more comfortable in my life, having been so afraid, scared, unsure of myself. But it came out wonderful, and it's one of my favorite recordings.
I had a list, and I'm not kidding. It's easy to find. They're on the internet or on many different places you can read about Grady, these lists of the people that you've recorded with. I mean, you folks just would not believe it, and you can't even really start with a list like that because you're not going to get anywhere near the end of it. But just a few things I'd like to ask you about. One is, great among the many records that he plays on that you all know is the classic Killer Joe. You know, and with that's one of the most famous groove records in the history of the world. And I'd like just to get a little bit of the story of that, and then maybe just a few minor little things like maybe Frank Sinatra or Duke Ellington or Louis Armstrong or just a few people like that that you happen to have been around and played with, or Benny Goodman. I don't know if we want to go there. Woo! So these are just
Stay away from that one.
okay. All right. So
Benny was the meanest man in the world.
well, I'll say one thing. It's not all roses, you know what I mean? And were you there with Hank?
Hank Jones?
With Benny and all that?
With Benny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did things with him.
Let's get back to Killer Joe. So, or Benny, or whatever you want. I'm just throwing
I'm
something out.
fine, wherever you want to go.
How did Killer Joe come about? How did that groove get hit?
I don't know. I don't know how any groove got hit.
You just did it.
You know.
Yeah.
Because I don't sit around home and think about this is the groove I'm going to play, because I never know. You get in the studio, and your conductor or the leader of the band tells you what he wants. And they very rarely write for the rhythm section. They'll write horn parts, but they say, well, I want this kind of thing here, man. It's okay. But the simplicity of Killer Joe was, I think, the thing that drove it over the edge. The groove never varied. And it was so simple. Just,
breaking my heart. I don't want to hear that.
That's the kind of groove you can go to sleep on. It was so sweet. I mean, no big things, nobody playing crazy. Everybody was in tune. You know, the same, you're breathing the same breath. You can see people breathing. Boom, yeah. And it's unbelievable, man. Those things happen. And I can't explain what happens. Yeah.
You mentioned Ron Carter and your hookup with him. Again, most folks, I don't know, when you look at a band, if you're aware of what happens between a bass player and a drummer, and if that's not happening, I mean, I assume that, nothing's going to happen, and it's almost like a marriage. And
It is like a marriage.
right, and I'm wondering if you could talk. You talked about Ron, and I was wondering just for a moment if you could address some of the other great people, whether it's either George Duvivier or Milt or whomever who you enjoyed when you got to a record date and you would look and see somebody there and say you knew that it was going to be right.
Well, there's so many different kinds of groove, and the producers, they know who they want to call. They know who they want to hook together. Because it worked over here, so I think it should work here. And they pull you into whatever groove they have in mind. They can't do it themselves, but they're clever enough to put 2 or 3 people together and know that something's going to happen, something that they enjoy, that they want to happen. And that's what's happened in 98% of my career. We don't have any big secrets. Ain't no big secret. You go in there and you take the ideas of the producer, the arranger, the composer, the writer, and you say, "What do you hear, man?" This was, I don't know, greatest little thing. Yeah, okay. Okay. So you try 2 or 3 different things, and you find the one that makes him go, yeah, and you go ahead and you elaborate on that one. It's not a secret. It's also about feeling other people. If you tell me, "Hey man, I can swing all by myself," you're a liar. You might strike a little groove for a while, but in a minute, that groove's gonna be gone. Because each of us needs help, and that's the way you build these things. You receive energy from those around you, and these are people who are creative geniuses. So why wouldn't you say, "Oh, I like that. I want to play some of that with you, man." It's not a mystery, but I don't know that many people aren't geared for the recording industry. They're geared for their thing, and they do that, and they do it extraordinarily well. I just never had anything that I thought was so good that I wanted to put that out there and nothing else. I like for everything I do to be groovy, and I groove with you and you and you and whoever else wants to groove, and enjoy it. That's my life.
Before we open it up to questions to the audience, I'd just like to ask you about, since we're trying to build a jazz museum in Harlem, the jazz scene as you encountered it in Harlem, the clubs that were here, it was Basie's or whatever club, Count Basie's, I'm not sure which clubs were running, and did you work in Harlem much, or were you too busy in the studios?
I was busy in the studios. Occasionally I'd work in Harlem. I worked with a lot of Harlem musicians, but You know, Harlem is a strange entity. It, by all rights, it should have the greatest groove houses in the world. Yet it doesn't have them. And what's the reason? The reason is there's black entrepreneurs. They just don't seem to want to deal with that side of the whole thing. It's about that thing that's going to make quick money.
Yes.
Quick money. Let's get some quick money. No. Harlem doesn't have the jazz houses that it should have. And I feel uncomfortable saying that. But this should be the groove capital of the whole expletive world.
Yes. Big.
You know, this should be the place. And you know, and in a lot of places they want you to play, and they want you to play for $20 a night. What is that? Big money, quick money. Let's charge everybody $40 a person. Why? You get 20 people for $40, you ain't got no money. But if you get 250 people at $10.50 a piece, you got a little bread.
That's right.
You know? Big money, quick money. I don't care about it.
I'd like to open it up for questions. Anybody would like to make have any questions or comments? We usually do this towards the way around. Anyone? I'd like to say one thing, which is, there we go.
I just had a musical question. I've heard drummers talk about.
Can you stand up and talk a little bit louder so they can all hear you?
I've heard drummers talk about where you play the time, and you were talking about like a drummer has a relationship with the bass player, and people have almost like a rhythmic personality. And sometimes, like say, Tony Williams is known for tipping or playing anxious, or somebody else is known for playing kind of laid back and maybe behind or something. Or do you have any comments about that, like how you deal with someone else's rhythmic personality, and do you have a sense of that, like moving the beat ahead or laying back on the beat or playing in the middle to try to keep the band together? Or it's kind of an open question.
Thank you.
When you say Tony Williams, you're talking about a drummer who is extremely talented. He's got, the hands and feet of doom. He can do all kinds of incredible things. He could play loud. He never could play soft. He was a genius, but he was a genius by himself. And I don't think Tony ever needed help from anybody else. That's the way he impressed me. The person, I mean, he was, hey, all right, like, it's as though he never wanted to speak with anyone. And not that I cared about it, but, you find yourself in this niche that you make. You make this for yourself. Yeah, he had to have set out to be alone. He played with very few different people, and it drove him crazy. He died as a boy, I mean, he was just too cool. He knew too much. And you're talking about moving the beat around. If you want to move the beat around, give everybody a different chart. You move the beat around and the melody and everything else. I don't move around with the beat unless it's for a movie date. Something that has to be, you're playing, at times you watch screens and what have you, and the band is playing one thing, but you're watching the screen and you're catching all the effects that you'll see here that you're told to catch and some that they miss. Then you move the beat around. But that's not designed for good listening music. That's designed for action on that film and for that film and that action and that sound to grab you. You're listening to the music, but you don't hear the music. You're just listening. You know, you hear all these for sound effects. If you want sound effects, that's one thing. If you want a groove, that's another thing. People know who to call and who not to call. I don't think anybody would call me and say, "Hey, Tate, I want the groove to shift around here." I said, "Well, hold it, damn, I just got a call and, hey man, I'll quit you in a minute if it's not musical to me, you know." But music changes. And the cats who are playing now, and each person is playing a totally different thing. And if that's what you like to do, if that's what you want to do, be my guest. Enjoy it and do it well. And lots of cats do. I know some young drummers. I've been teaching down in Washington for about 13 years at Howard. And I've got some drummers down there that just blow you away. And they all come from Houston, Texas. One boy, Chris Dave, he's just the most unbelievable player, most unbelievable drummer I've ever seen. He can play four distinct rhythm patterns in 4 distinct times. He can play this hand in 3, this hand in 5. The right foot will be in 7, and 11 over here in the left foot. And he can close. I don't know whether you understand this or not, but a roll says. Grrr. He can close a roll with either of his appendages. Just. Grrr. I said, this is not a man, this is a machine. This is a drum playing machine. He's bad too. These kids can do amazing things, and they'll get it together. I mean, Chris is just beautiful, man. I love him. But I couldn't imagine even attempting to play like that. That's not me, But at 12, I might have been able to say, "Teach me how to do that, Chris," and then another place. But I'm Grady. Do you know what I mean?
Thank God.
Thanks for that question, too.
I just have a statement. Having grown up in Harlem, I know during the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, it was the swingin'est place.
That's right.
And we had all the clubs, Small's Paradise,
Yeah.
Baby Grand, Club Baron, Mitten's Playhouse. When drugs started coming into Harlem, people were afraid to come out because people used to spend money in Harlem. The clubs would always be crowded. Right now, they have one place up on St. Nicholas Park.
Yeah.
There used to be La Marcherie. There used to
Yeah.
be all the clubs all over. And then you'd get a cab and go down to Birdland, go to the 5 Spot, so, and the 50th Street.
Yeah, but see,
But it was a different era.
yeah, but those clubs are still in existence.
Nothing happening. People are not coming out because they're
No,
afraid at night.
But you have people coming through. They're visiting New York. I don't need the mic.
Yes, you do have people visiting, but
You have
where are
people
the clubs
visiting.
in Harlem?
Well, they find the clubs downtown.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I
There's
mean?
none uptown.
No, they're not uptown.
That's what I'm saying. It's a different
I
era.
remember when all the clubs were happening here. But the thing is the money. I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens to the money. I don't know what happens to the crazy people who deal with the money. I don't know what happens to the people who don't want to pay the musicians to play. I don't know what happens to those people. And I don't want to know because I don't want to know them.
Any questions or comments over anywhere else? Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about young people, though. I was reading, I think it was a New York Times story about how some of the classical symphony orchestra is suffering because young people, a lot of them are Black and Latino, are interested in European classical music, so they're trying to build up some knowledge among, develop some musicians and develop an audience. And I'm wondering what people in the jazz world are doing to have that happen. I mean, I know you're doing things at Howard, but that our young people aren't understanding their history of our American music.
Well, they don't understand it because there's no one to teach them. I mean, they don't see music is strange. Music is something that's out here for everybody. I love to hear good music. I love to hear chord changes. I love to hear instrumentalists who can work all over their instrument and play with a great sound. About 25 or 28 years ago, the musical instruments, were taken out of the schools. See, when I grew up, I could have any instrument I wanted, overnight or for a week or for 2 weeks, and I could try that, and if that didn't work, they'd give me another one. You know? They took the instruments out of the schools, and that left such a terrible feeling in, I don't know about the white kids, but I do know that these black kids coming up in these schools with all of this rhythm that is innate, I don't give a damn what you look like. Blacks have a walk, a talk, a body motion, and a finger snapping thing.
Yeah.
It's just there.
All
Babies,
right.
little babies.
Yeah.
You see little babies go, you know? And look, it's not taught. This is something that, this is the genes.
There you go.
And when they took the instruments out of these schools, these enormously talented and hungry for emotion, these young men and women found another way to produce music, and it was with their bodies and with their feet sliding, and to pick up an old record and say cuckoo cuckoo. They made something that could make them say yeah. And it came because of all that shit that's inside of us. You can't get an instrument to play, so you make your own. And in so doing, they made their own lyric. You might not like it, but it's out here, and it's everywhere on the face of this earth. That new music that is so reprehensible to most of us, because we don't like to hear certain words, or people refer to as this or that, or you know. Hey, they're telling it on their CDs. In Finland, you can find a hip hop group, hip hop rappers. You find them everywhere. Japanese are just loaded. It's everywhere on the face of this earth. You know. So hey, it's the fault of whomever it is that makes certain decisions. You take the glory out of me, I'll take some money from you. These kids are taking billions and hundreds of billions of dollars away from those who used to have it. They don't care anything about you and your culture and what kind of music you're into. Here's my music, here's my stuff. And they're doing it to the death.
What I don't understand that came into it, and you seem to have the answers for a lot of things. I mean, I never made that connection of the taking of the instruments out of the school, and then they got to play something, so they play the record player. I mean, it seems simple now that you said it, but one thing also, Grady, I'm curious about, I don't know if you have an answer for it, but I'm just curious what your opinion is about it.
Well, I have an answer for
Is it-
everything, but it might not be right.
No, what I'm saying is, in this music that you're talking about, is this thing about the degradation of women. And that's something that strikes me. And there's all different kinds of music out there, but when you have a large amount of popular music in which people objectify and call women names and things that I'm sure none of us ever would have imagined in a million years would become part of popular culture, and the fact that I think some women are buying these records too.
What do you mean, some women?
All women are buying
All
the records.
right.
Okay, but no, but I mean the women are buying
No,
the records,
I know that.
and their husbands,
But the-
boyfriends are buying the records. I mean, I couldn't imagine in a million years playing a record in which I was referred to as in the way that these people are being referred to.
dog.
Could I,
Right.
They, you
Or
know.
worse.
could I say something about that, please? I just have to say.
Oh, here we go.
I'm writing right now extensive treatises on hip hop, right? Grady, let me say, I'm so glad to hear somebody, older person, who talk about hip hop and don't say something absolutely stupid. You said, what you said was really wonderful. And it is what I'm finding out from my research. First of all, to say that rap records refer to women in the way you say, rap, as he said, hip hop is all over the world. That's just one small part of what people are saying. And every time somebody say that, I know it's somebody who, number one, is not a hip hop fan. Number two, has not made any attempt to really study this music.
You're not talking
Let
about
me
me,
say something else. Well, I'm talking about whoever raised that question. I know it. Now let me just say this. The women in hip hop, women today, are not some passive vessels. Obviously, you never heard Lil' Kim or Shantae or Rod Digger. These women are given as good as they get. You understand what I'm saying? These are independent, strong women, women like Queen Latifah. You know, these women, these Eve, these women are multi-millionaire business women. If you listen to the exchanges on these records, these are powerful women, the same kind of women you see joining the military and training side by side with men. They don't need anybody to be chivalrous and come to their aid. They are quite capable of speaking for themselves, all right? And that is a misrepresentation of hip-hop. Hip-hop is what he said it is. It is in terms of invention in the 20th century, it's equal to what the Trinidadians did with the steel drums. They just take these cast-off drums and make a new way of making music out of it. It is, in fact, the only genuinely popular music in the history of Black America, which speaks directly and seriously to important social issues without the poetic ambiguity of blues, in which you could not speak seriously about the black condition, even in song, when traditional blues was born, because you'd have been killed. You understand? Rhythm and blues was for catharsis and pleasure, because we had Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to talk about our problems. Hip-hop is the music of a generation in crisis, for whom nobody is speaking, who's caught in the disaster of structural economic development where they're out of jobs for life. You understand? So it is one of the most inventive responses to the horrible predicament of our youth that has come along. And it is a great art form. And you don't have to, I love Wagner, I love Ellington, and I love, hip-hop, all right? And you don't have to be any a division between them, and to view it as just some music where women are being trampled is nonsense and ignorance, and it's not true.
Well, just hold it a moment. Wait, but just don't walk out and say that what I said was nonsense and ignorance, and then walk out. Now that's not fair either. Now, I have a
I don't
microphone.
want to go nowhere. I mean, if you want to make a discussion of it, that's
I would
fine.
love to have it. Well, I would love to have it, but hold it a moment. Before you characterize me or my comments. Wait.
Don't take it personally.
I didn't interrupt you. And I didn't. And I respect what you say. And I have the feeling that you're here to participate tonight in our talk with Grady. And I did make some comments. You're absolutely right. And I don't believe, and if you interpreted as what I said, and I could see how you could interpret it that way, that I was blanketing, making some general statement about all of it, I think if you went back and actually listened to what I did say, that I was not talking about all of it. I was talking about a segment of it, which you can't deny. And if you want to use the adjectives that you used in terms of how you see it, in terms of either calling someone a bitch or a hoe, or wait, hold it.
There's
I'm not
nothing in
finished.
hip-hop that you won't find in
I'm
the
not
lyrics of Jelly Roll Morton. There's nothing in hip hop.
But
that
there's
you
one
can
big
find in
difference.
previous blues
But there's
songs.
one big
None at
difference
all.
about it. But there's one big difference
What is
about
the difference?
here's the difference. It's Grady's night. I want to get back to Mr. Tate, and
You
I
wanted
would.
to make an argument out of it.
Well-
I just made a statement.
Well, but
To your
you
statement.
you characterized me and my comments,
I
and
said it was ignorant comment. Yes.
and that's fine.
Right.
And I'm glad you came.
Right.
I'm glad you came, and I would like to talk some more with you. So don't walk away. But one has to be honest. So this is. Yeah, listen, I'm not worried at all. I'm happy that we're here having this talk tonight. Grady?
I'm glad I started it.
I said to myself, why am I bringing this up again?
You know?
But I would like to speak some more of that at some point. Miss, yes, sir.
Hi, as one of the younger people here.
There, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
Tell us old folks.
I just want to
Make
point
peace,
something
make
out.
peace.
Yeah, on both levels, I just want to point something out.
Please.
The energy in the room has completely shifted in a moment.
Yes.
You know, just by going from what's of now, coming from what's of then, of like the jazz and the music getting into you. And just to go back to that for just a moment.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say, I'm so inspired by you. As a vocalist, as an artist, I want to know two things. First is, oh, I'm so nervous. I'm sorry.
Don't be nervous.
The first one
And thank you.
You're welcome, of course. The first one is I'd like to know your favorite Shakespeare play. I know you said you performed in Richard III, but I was wondering if you had a second or another. And the second is you said 90% of the time you were scared. You didn't know what you was doing. You know, these people were like, oh, what am I doing? And as a performer, I take that with me and I find I have to focus that energy. Do you have any advice, especially to younger people who feel like, you know, some of the hip hop world, it's right, like the gentleman said, it's not all the same thing, it's different, it's give or take. But the music industry right now is it's not like it used to be at all. You know, not what my parents came up with. I mean, if you ask I'm 25 years old, and you ask an average 25-year-old or an average 25 to, say, 15-year-old what their favorite group is, they're going to tell you some commercial. Mine's Earth, Wind & Fire, one of them. You know what I mean? It's just the roots, and that's what I came up on, jazz in New Orleans. So it's like, and that's where I'm from. And I basically wanted to get back to the point, what do you have to say to younger people as far as to encourage, you know, other than what everything you said tonight, you know, the fear and also your favorite Shakespeare play? I'm curious about that. So, thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
I started this thing, and I was trying to let everyone that can hear me know that all the kids are not bad. All the kids are not products of their environment, as one would suggest. They're individualists out here, and they're doing what they want to do. And some of it is great, just as some of the music is great, the jazz. Some of it's sad. You have to be very discerning in what you listen to and what you want to hear continually. You have to make that judge. It's your judgment. Whatever you like is what you should listen to. I don't tell anybody what to like. I can't. I tell me what I enjoy hearing, and if you ask me about it, I can explain to you why I like it and how much I like it. But I don't explain it to you so that you can like it too. You make your own decisions. These kids are marvelous. There's some of them are wild. Look at our jazz musicians, man. Yeah. You know, they came through some terrible periods. And when everybody was saying, whatever you do, don't be a jazz musician. That's the worst thing. You know, hey, it's about growth. You know, this will work itself out. This will work itself out. And one of the things that's so interesting, if this description of women is so degrading, why aren't the women more up in arms about it? Is that what it is? Well, maybe they know a little better than you think. You know, some of us have been steeped in certain little traits and certain little things we do, and sometimes as we grow older, we think this is the only way it should be. You know, the older we get, the more we should be looking to the kids to see what they're doing and to make comments on it. You know, whatever you do. But, you know, just don't blanket it. It's all bad. Wrong. You know? Leave them alone. They'll grow up. They'll grow up. Much ado about nothing.
Does that answer you?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, darling. Thank you.
Yeah, we have got just a couple of minutes left here, folks. Unfortunately, this has been it's been going by so quick. But before I introduce Mr. Thomas to say something, my co-producer, I'd just like to say something about the audience tonight. On the one hand, it's an old ploy of a band leader, of an entertainer, someone to look at the audience and say, I want you all to give a round of applause for yourselves. But having said that, actually, a bunch of people commented on this during the break tonight, and I felt it tonight. And first of all, I want to thank my friend back there for bringing that good feeling back and all that kind of stuff. And I'll admit some responsibility on my part for what happened there. But having said that, the feeling in the room tonight, in general, from get-go, from letter A to letter Z, I've been in a lot of rooms hearing a lot of people interviewed, and I've never heard quite a combination of someone speaking and the people in the room. There's been a simpatico and a concentration, and just like I feel like I'm in someone's living room and just hanging out with someone.
That's what it is.
And
That's what it is.
Yes.
We're all hanging out.
That's what I'm saying.
That's wonderful.
It is. It's a very, very special feeling. So I want to thank everyone who came here for participating. And having said that, Grady?
Then I'll be quiet.
I just want to say something, but first I want to ask a question. For how many of you is this the very first time that you've been here? Please raise your hand if this is your first time. Okay, all right. Well, I want to especially welcome all of you who are here for the first time. I want to ask you to please come back. Each time is wonderful and different in its own way, and we're particularly proud to have Mr. Grady Tate tonight. And I want to give him another round of applause, please. And I also just want to make note, Loren mentioned about the simpatico in the room. And I just want to say that, you know, if you look around, in this room is one of the most diverse audiences you can imagine. I mean, age, ethnicity, culture. I mean, look. You know, right here. And it's about Mr. Tate.
That's right.
It's about this music. It's about the Jazz Museum of Harlem, in Harlem. And I'd like you to please keep supporting us. Make sure you give $1 on the way out. And tell other people. And continue supporting us. If you put your name and information on the mailing list, we'll stay in touch. And we'd love to see you again. So thank you very much.
I have one last thing to say. If this could only be the whole world, wouldn't we be into something?